Good afternoon, and for our viewers on the West Coast, good morning. Welcome to the webcast. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. If you would like to enlarge the video screen, just click on the icon in the lower right corner. To ask a question during the webcast, please use the question box on your screen. Questions will be answered at the end of the presentation. Today, Jan Gnida will be presenting her third installment on the topic of CG-CAHPS. Jan, who's been with PRC for 20 years, is the Director of the Patient Experience and Government Surveys Departments. And now, here's Jan.
Thank you so much for joining me today as we wrap up our first ever webcast series. I hope you've learned a few things from the episodes regarding ACOs and PQRS and the new value modifier. Today we're going to bring it all together and tackle a question that I am called upon to answer nearly once a week. What should we do? Spoiler alert, I don't know what you should do. But I do have some things for you to think about, and I hope when we're done today, you'll feel like you're walking away with a solid framework to help your organization make this important decision. We're going to explore two broad approaches for measuring patient experience, kind of setting the table for you. And then I've got two very specific questions that you'll have to be able to answer before you can make a decision. We'll close by talking about study design and the types of choices that lay ahead once you've come to the bigger answer of what you should do. My key message to people as it relates to what's required and what they should do is this: you can do whatever you like. Primarily because of the sampling approach being used by CMS for the CAHPS for ACOs and CAHPS for PQRS programs, your required data collection will have to be separate and distinct from whatever else you may want to do to enhance your understanding of your patient's perceptions of care. For some people, that's a tough message. They just want to be told what to do and how to do it. For others, and hopefully for many of you joining me today, this is great news. It means we can keep doing what's been working for us for years, or it means that we can build a study design that is custom and unique to our goals and needs. We can do the CMS thing over here on the side once a year when we have to, but ongoing, we're going to use a survey and methodology that are tailored to us. So let's start with survey choices. When you think about the kind of survey to use for measuring the experience of your patients in the doctor's office setting, we know that one option is a CAHPS survey. CAHPS has been around for a long, long time. The CG-CAHPS instrument in particular has been in the public domain since 2007. Anymore, I think the first question people ask when they're thinking about measurement for a new patient care service is, do we have a CAHPS survey for it? Now, if you're familiar with PRC, you know that we present another option. PRC has long maintained that a loyalty-focused survey, which uses an excellent to poor rating scale, is the instrument of choice. We've been using this survey philosophy for almost 20 years. We've developed analyses and meaningful reporting tools for it. We believe that in the highly competitive market of finding a doctor, patient loyalty is crucial for retaining your patients. This is the tool that will help you understand how you can distinguish yourself from your competitors. Now, there are numerous ways to build a CG-CAHPS survey by AHRQ's design. If you're interested in understanding the whole host of options, please take a look at the webcast titled The History of the CG-CAHPS Survey, which can be found online at www.prccustomresearch.com in the events section under on-demand webcasts. The granddaddy of them all is the CAHPS for ACOs survey, which contains 80 questions. We've been talking with several clients about using this survey as a starting point and trimming down from there. The CAHPS for ACOs survey is arranged into 12 summary measures plus patient demographic questions, and it asks patients to reflect on all of their visits over the last 6 months. It's built upon the CG-CAHPS survey developed by AHRQ several years ago. Measures 1, 2, 3, and 8 are part of that CG-CAHPS core item set, so they must be included in any version of a CG-CAHPS survey. And we encourage anyone who's interested in a CAHPS survey for their medical group to include these as a base. From there, it's a matter of determining which aspects of care are of greatest interest to your organization, or maybe which aspects of care you sense need additional attention. For an ongoing measurement, where we'll be talking to patients each week after their visits, we recommend a survey that is 35 to 40 questions that stays in the 5 to 7 minute phone call range. The PRC Loyalty Survey differs most noticeably from the CAHPS survey in that it asks patients about their most recent visit, and we use an excellent to poor scale. You'll notice that some of the topics are the same, and both surveys put a strong emphasis on measuring the interactions with the physician or provider specifically. At PRC, we believe that understanding the perceptions of patients with an excellent to poor scale gives you the best indicators of patient loyalty. When you deliver excellent care in the eyes of the patient, patients will be more likely to continue seeking you out for care. They'll be more likely to follow your instructions for their own care, and they'll be more likely to recommend you to friends and family. A lot can happen in a 15-minute visit with a patient, and the PRC Loyalty Survey captures key elements of that visit and gives your providers and staff useful feedback to inform their process improvement efforts. These two instruments are coming from two different angles, and both can be meaningful for your medical group. The Loyalty Survey is asking patients to reflect on how care was delivered, and the CAHPS survey is asking patients to reflect on how often care was delivered, how often certain behaviors occurred. Elements of both may be important to your organization, and a blended survey instrument might be the best option for you. Again, you're developing a survey for you, not a survey that needs to follow certain guidelines to meet requirements. So you're free to pick and choose the topics and questions that are going to be most useful to your leadership, your physicians and providers, and your staff. You have a lot of freedom with this. For some people, this is scary. This is daunting. There's a great big buffet out there. How do we know what's best for us? I have 2 questions that should help you bring the issues into focus. These are questions that apply to any situation where you're making decisions about research, and I encourage you to keep these in your back pocket anytime someone says, hey, we should do some surveying for this service, or we need some measurement for that care setting. Number 1, what is your research objective? Why do you feel like you need to measure? What are you planning to do with this data once you have it? Being able to answer this question is vital, and it's the first step in creating an appropriate study design. Some groups do patient surveys because they want feedback to incorporate into employee performance reviews, either formal or informal. Maybe you've set performance goals for clinic managers, and there are financial incentives tied to those goals. More and more, we're seeing medical groups incorporate patient experience goals into the bonus packages for their physicians and providers. If you don't identify that as an objective from the outset, you may not have appropriate survey questions. You may not have enough data, enough interviews for your reporting period. You need to know how you're going to use this data when it's in your hands. Gathering feedback on process improvement initiatives is a very common objective also. If this is your goal, then we strongly encourage use of the PRC Loyalty Survey so we can collect data that can be tied to a specific visit, a specific point in time. This allows you to compare before and after scores relative to when you launched your new initiative. The tool is very sensitive, and you can usually tell within 2 to 3 weeks if you're having an impact with patients. The PRC Loyalty Survey also allows for a great deal of customization. So if you're working on something that isn't covered by the survey, we can easily add a question to measure this new aspect of care. Sometimes the reason why we measure is because we have to, or because our competitors are, so we should too. These are perfectly legitimate reasons to collect data. And again, understanding that this is your reason for fielding a survey will inform the choices you make related to survey content, number of interviews, methodology, etc. And this leads nicely into the second question. What do you value most in your data? Think again about an organization that does research because they have to, but they aren't really planning to do much with the data beyond that. For them, I assume low cost is most important, and that's going to drive decisions about how many interviews they do and which methodology they use. Now think about the medical group that's focused on process improvement. For them, timeliness is going to be very important. They need feedback on a regular, consistent cycle to understand the impact of their improvement initiatives. Timeliness drives decisions about methodology and decisions about frequency of reporting to different levels within the group. And quality. If you are planning to use these results for anything related to performance evaluations or financial incentives, you'd better believe that quality is important. Without a representative sample of patients in the results, and without a sufficient number of interviews to make the data reliable, you'll have a big problem on your hands. Now, it's really the case that only one of these things is important to medical groups. As with so many things, it's a balancing act, and we encourage you to think about how these things fit relative to each other. This is a great conversation starter for the leadership team within your group. After you've discussed your options and you think you know where you stand, then a conversation with your PRC client relationship manager is the next step in working through your study design. As you tell us about your research objectives and what you value most in the data, we'll offer recommendations that are appropriate to what you're looking for, and we'll work with you to design an approach that is customized to meet the needs of your medical group. To close today, I want to give you a flavor of what that conversation with PRC is going to look like. We recognize that there are many medical groups out there that have not done any formal patient surveys with a vendor before. Maybe you've been collecting anecdotal information, maybe you've been doing some type of homegrown survey, maybe you've just been dealing with patient feedback from a risk management perspective. The two questions I've just shared with you are crucial to the process, and they may take more than one sit-down with your leadership to work through. But once you have some answers, the table will be set for what comes next. We're going to talk with you about the survey. What do you want to measure? If you're an ACO, or as your group comes into the measurement program through PQRS, we'll want to talk about how your ongoing measurement will relate to the required measurement for CMS that's done once a year. You should know it's going to be extremely difficult to perfectly align ongoing results with the official CMS numbers from the report, and you might want to think about that, consider that. We also have decisions to make about the sample frame. The official measurement for CMS will only include Medicare patients, but that's just a portion of the patients you treat, so it might make sense to include everyone, regardless of payer, in your ongoing study. Likewise, CMS is not collecting data on pediatric patients at this time, but that might be of value to you. Do we need to talk to the parents of patients who are under 18? Are we going to target interviews by provider or by location? This answer depends on what your reporting needs will be. And more about reporting. We'll need to understand how frequently you want to get data in front of different audiences. Maybe we look at results for the medical group overall on a weekly basis, or maybe even by specialty on a weekly basis. Physician or provider results tend to be reported as year-to-date scores, and groups commonly distribute those results through PRC's EasyView2You reporting tool on a monthly basis. And then there's methodology. Here's where that quality, timeliness, low-cost decision makes the biggest impact. As medical groups and practices are rolling out patient portals for your meaningful use goals, you're collecting patient email addresses more than ever before, which is why an internet methodology is becoming a more viable option for measurement of this population. PRC has been conducting medical group surveys via internet using an email invitation to the patient for several years, and the interest continues to grow. We could spend quite a while talking through the nuances of reporting data collected by internet and how to report those results in conjunction with data collected by phone, but we'll save that for a future webcast. I'll just wet your whistle with these considerations. This is what we'll talk about if you're interested in exploring the internet methodology for surveying your medical group patients. There's more to it than just declaring that we'll send an email to everyone, and we're happy to guide you through the process and decisions needed when choosing this mode of survey administration. I hope you have a better idea now of the kinds of questions to ask yourself and your organization when you're thinking about measuring patient experience in your clinics and physician practices. I imagine this also brings to mind some questions for me. So Nancy, what questions have we received from our guests?
Thank you, Jan. Great job, as always. And then our third to last CG-CAHPS session, there is one other one, and I'll let Jan mention about it here in just a few moments, but there is another one that you can access, and I will send you the link to it along with the PowerPoint from today's presentation, and I will also get you the link from today's presentation. So if you wanted to share this with others or you wanted to watch it again, you will have that available. So that will be coming to you all who registered and are watching today, so be on the lookout for that. If you do have any questions for Jan for today, make sure that you use the questions box that's there on your computer screen, and you can type in any questions, and when those are coming in, I'll see them here on my iPad and I can read those aloud for Jan to answer. Like I mentioned, there is one other webcast about CG-CAHPS, and it's the history of CG-CAHPS. So I'll let you say just a couple of words about that.
Yeah, there'll be a link on the corporate website too, under events, under the on-demand videos. This is a video that really goes through the whole history of all the different versions that AHRQ has developed. So if you're interested in that, if you're playing CG-CAHPS trivia some night and you want to brush up, that would be a great video to watch.
Thank you. And like she said, that's just an on-demand one, so there's no question and answer session to that one. That one is just available at any time that you want to watch it, and there's unfortunately no chance to ask any questions. But like always, Jan's willing to answer any questions that you have, so you can certainly email her. And her email address is in the PowerPoint that you'll receive today, so you can access it there. So let's get to these questions that have been coming in. Our first question, when you said that you can do whatever you like, are you referring to measuring the patient experience above and beyond the requirements for CAHPS for ACOs and CAHPS for PQRS?
Yes. So, you know, CMS has these programs where there are required data collection. There are certain rules, certain surveys you have to use. And those will be point in time, or serial point in time, I'll call them. They happen once a year. But we find more and more organizations are interested in collecting data ongoing throughout the year for a variety of reasons. And for that activity, that's what I'm talking about when I say you can do whatever you like. You can make that survey a blend of loyalty questions and CAHPS questions. You can make that survey all CAHPS questions if you wanted to. Excuse me. There's a few things that we would need to do around the time of official data collection to make sure we're not double sampling patients at that time. But for the most part, throughout the year, the survey that you design is really meant to be, or can be, whatever's going to work best for your organization.
Great. Our next one. What about the PCMH CAHPS survey? How does that differ from the others, and what is that measuring that's different?
Yes. The PCMH is a version of the CG-CAHPS survey, and we'll talk a little bit more about that specifically in that history video. There are a couple different uses for that. One specific use is if you are involved or participating in the NCQA PCMH certification program. This is for specific practices that are recognized as patient-centered medical homes. That specific survey tool can be used for part of your meeting your requirements for that program. There's also a separate distinction in reporting opportunity to earn through using that tool. Most of the questions that are on that PCMH supplement are also included in the ACO and PQRS versions of the survey. There are 6 or 7, I think, that are not, but most of them are there as well. That's in and of itself, the PCMH item set is a supplement that AHRQ developed that can be added to the CG-CAHPS tool. Again, if those are topics that are of interest to you, that you feel would be useful to measure for your organization.
A lot of acronyms.
I know.
Okay.
A lot of acronyms.
Let's see. If we develop a survey to measure the patient experience on an ongoing basis and use sections 1, 2, 3, and 8 from the CAHPS for ACO survey, how many questions will be in the survey?
Those sections in and of themselves are about, I think I'm trying to remember. I want to say about 25 questions, I think. So you could do that along with maybe 10 or 15 additional loyalty questions if you want, and that'll make a good length survey that won't be so burdensome for patients. But those questions by themselves are about 25 questions.
Okay. What do you feel is better? To ask a patient to look back at all their visits over the past 6 months, or to evaluate a specific visit?
That really depends on, going back to question number 1, that really depends on what your objective is. If you are trying to measure what's happening in your organization at a certain point in time, because you want to measure some process improvement, you need to be able to tie those results to a specific point in time, and that's where I think asking patients about that last visit they had, and we can reference the date if you're providing that to us, that's where you're going to get that really useful feedback for being able to understand at any point in time what was happening within your clinic or within your practice. But that isn't to say there isn't value in asking patients to reflect on all of their experiences either. So you may find that an ongoing measurement isn't financially feasible for you, or it's just not something you're ready to undertake at this time. If there's something that maybe you want to do once just to kind of get a sense of what your results might be, then asking patients to think about their experiences over the last 6 months would be perfectly appropriate. I think, chances are when you're asking people to think of that, the most recent visits they had are probably going to cast the most weight in the way they're responding to those questions. And you may have a lot of patients who don't have many visits over a period. So it may end up being that accumulation of those most recent visits when they're thinking about that as well. But again, when you are trying to decide which time frame you want to ask patients to think about, the first step is understanding what do you want to do with this data. And when you understand that, that should lead you to how to answer that question.
Great. Where can I find more information about the CG-CAHPS surveys?
Oh, sure. If, of course, the definitive source for information about CG-CAHPS and all of the versions of the survey, all of the supplemental item sets that are available, is on the AHRQ website. And if you look at the history of CG-CAHPS video that I mentioned earlier, that website is listed on there. It's probably listed on a few of these other videos that we've done recently as well. Certainly you can check out PRC's website, prccustomresearch.com. And under the products and then government surveys section, there will be a page that talks about CG-CAHPS. We've got a page for CG-CAHPS and the ACO, and there's a variety of pages there as well. These videos, hopefully, will be a great resource for people going forward too. And we encourage you. The reason we're making them is so that you can share them with more people. You can come back to them later to refer to. In the slides as well, all of these websites are listed in these slides that we've been sending out.
Okay, great. Are there any requirements on adding loyalty questions to the CG-CAHPS survey?
Requirements, no. And maybe the person was really thinking about restrictions. When you are doing your own measurement, if that's ongoing or just a point in time measurement that you're doing just for yourself, you are free to do whatever with that survey you like. So you can add as few as you like. When we are doing, the ACO CAHPS for ACO survey right now, that survey is rather lengthy. And we are not adding questions to it at that time. I would anticipate that will be the model for the PQRS measurement that takes place next year with vendors as well. So you wouldn't add loyalty questions to those, but if you've got your own data collection happening, you can certainly add those there.
Okay. This is a question that goes along well with what you were just saying. Does the length of the survey affect response rate?
I don't think it affects response rate dramatically. We've looked at this particularly with some of these longer CAHPS surveys that we are fielding for CMS. We're not seeing a marked drop off after a certain amount of time. Excuse me. After a certain amount of time into the survey. So I don't think it's necessarily detracting or discouraging people from getting all the way to the end. But we don't know yet what kind of impact that might have on asking them to do a survey a second time or a third time or doing a survey for some other type of healthcare that they may have received. So it's always good to be mindful of the burden, such as it is, that we are placing on patients when we ask them to participate in these surveys and we ask them to complete these questions for us, and make sure that we are not asking too much time from them and not asking them to think about so many things that would be overwhelming.
Okay. Is there a certain number of completed interviews that would be needed if we are looking at provider-specific evaluation or feedback?
Yeah. If you have been around PRC for any amount of time or talked with one of our consultants or one of our client relationship managers, you'll know that 50 is the magic number that we regularly quote. So if you want to do reporting on any level of analysis, such as a provider or a practice or a specialty, for example, and you want to do reporting for a certain time period, whether that's a quarter or a month or a year, that magic number is 50 per analysis per time period. So commonly, we see clients who do provider studies with us target to get 50 completed interviews for each physician and provider by the end of the year. And that 50 number is a good solid number that strikes a balance between giving you reliable data and being cost effective. If we don't have an FAQ yet on why 50 is the magic number, I'm sure we will soon.
It's a good hint.
Yeah.
That you just gave. Okay. No, I think I already did that one. You may have mentioned this before, but when can we expect CG-CAHPS surveys to be required?
Yes, I wish there was a simple, easy to understand. I wish I could point to the calendar and say, this date, this is when everybody has to start doing it. Unfortunately, it's not that simple, but we are seeing this begin to roll out through medical groups of a certain size. So the short answer is next year, 2015 data collection, so that will happen at the end of 2015. The CAHPS for PQRS survey will be required for groups of 100 or more providers or 100 or more eligible professionals. And there'll be more information coming out through PQRS for groups next year. That's the proposal, but we expect that proposal will be finalized as well. And then we anticipate that in future years, that threshold for the size of your group will continue to come down. So next year it'll be groups of 100 or more. The year after that, maybe groups of 25 or more, or they might even go down to groups of 10 or more. We haven't seen that yet. But it's coming. If you're a group of 100 or more, that will be next year. If you're a smaller group, it will be sometime within the next 2 to 3 years, I would expect.
Okay. And in your experience, on average, about what % of the patients do medical groups have email addresses for?
Email addresses for medical groups. We talk about we talk about the internet surveying option with a lot of our clients, and people are very interested in that, very excited about that. It's a new technology. It feels fresh. It feels different. It certainly feels cheaper than the other methodologies that vendors have historically used. And so this is great. We talk about how it works, show people, demonstrate the online survey tool, demonstrate the email invitation, all of that. And then we get to the point of discussing, well, how many email addresses do you have? And then that's where talks fall apart sometimes. For clients that we have been fielding this survey for medical groups for several years. For a handful of clients, well, I'll say more than a handful now, we're really starting to see this pick up. But we're finding, what we're hearing from people right now is they feel like they've probably got, maybe 20 to 30% coverage of emails for the patients that are seen in their practices. We hope that will go up, not just for the sake of surveying, but also for the sake of improved communication opportunities, all of the work that organizations are doing with their patient portals and trying to improve communication with their patients that way. And we are seeing it grow because we certainly have been talking with people that 2 years ago had 0, and now they're up to maybe 15 or 20%. So I can expect that to continue to increase over time as well.
Great. And that was the last of our questions. So
great questions today. Great.
Thank you, Jan. And thank you all of you for joining us today. And like I had said before, I will send out the PowerPoint and the links to today's webcast. And then there will also be a link for the history of the CG-CAHPS webcast that Jan has done. So be on the lookout for those. Thank you for joining us.
Have a good afternoon.
Bye-bye.